These days we're spoiled with Chug G1 Optimus Primes. It's a seemingly endless trail of iteration as we get primes who are more and more accurate to the original source material. But where did it all start? Hello and thank you for watching, this is SDSC taking a look at Classics Optimus Prime. This toy is 19 years old, making it nearly as old now as the G1 figure was when it first released. So you could almost say the Classics moniker is more fitting today than it was originally. Naturally, there's going to be a lot of nostalgia clouding people's judgment on this figure. However, I for one never actually owned the mold as a kid, and even disliked it at the time. But nowadays, that couldn't be further from the truth. So let's get into why. Surprise, surprise, Optimus's alt mode is a red and blue cab over semi. Given modern context, it's easy to write this mode off, but it's worth remembering that at the time, this was an exciting return to form. Even today, I think this mode does a lot to stand out, with details like the side cowling or the wind vane. And more than just about any other Chug Prime, he feels like a real truck I could see on the road one day. Something about him just feels very modern and lifelike, which is funny to say about a toy that's old enough to drink. The use of paint is also pretty extensive. Loads of red paint is spent to cover up translucent blue plastic in this mode, but he still manages to have a fair amount of other details. All 6 rims are picked out in silver, and he rocks some arguably unnecessary but very welcome dynamic silver stripage. Would that silver paint have been better used picking out the grille and bumper? Maybe, but I suppose it depends how much the unpainted gray bothers you. Probably the weakest part of the truck is the rear end. It's not egregious, but the legs don't do all that much to hide the fact they're legs here, with the feet straight up hanging out the ends. The smokestack and wind vane are removable accessories. I can live without the smokestacks, but removing the vane leaves his head right out in the open, so let's just leave that on. Bringing in some more recent primes for comparison, you can see how he shapes up compared to a modern Voyager and Deluxe. Prime's transformation starts with one required and one optional bit of parts forming, as the smokestack and wind vane become his robot mode guns. The rest of his conversion can be summed up with 2 words: simple and chunky. The only part I could call slightly tricky is getting the arms out, as you do have to work around the giant clear plastic panels, which I am slightly terrified of cracking or scratching the paint off of. Beyond that, though, the transformation is pure bliss. Solid chunks of robot folding and swiveling into place to form an incredible robot mode. And oh man, what a robot mode. While Classics Prime was an attempt to harken back to the original boxy G1 designs, there's still more than a little Unicron trilogy left in his DNA. He's a chunky robot with a powerful silhouette who's coated from head to toe in greebles. All around, the sculpting is great, but I specifically want to call out the head sculpt, which strikes quite the angry visage. This Prime looks pissed off and ready for violence. Conversely, I'd argue the hands are the weakest point of the sculpt, looking more like lumps to my eye and never quite feeling like a fist. Still, the rest of the figure looks incredible. His one weakness is his kibble. Just about the entire sides of the cab end up hanging off his arms, while the grille, bumper, and front wheels curl up onto his back. It is a lot, but I really don't find the kibble all that intrusive while playing with the figure. More often than not, I honestly find myself forgetting the arm panels are even there, although your mileage may vary. His 2 accessories are a gun and another gun. The smokestack cannon has to be removed for transformation, while the wind vane blaster is actually able to be left on through the process. If you leave the wind vane on his back, that also opens up a storage spot for the smokestacks, allowing you to have an unarmed Prime with all of his accessories in tow. Bringing back the modern Primes, you can see how he scales with a modern Voyager and Deluxe. So just how articulated is this 19-year-old toy? I guess let's find out. First and foremost, the head is on a swivel. Unfortunately not a ball joint or anything, so there's no wiggle or waggle, just left and right. You can kind of cheat a downward joint using the panel it's on, which actually can look pretty good in certain poses, like he's glaring downwards disapprovingly. Then he has universal shoulders, which can do the full 360, 90 degrees up. He has bicep swivel, then a beautiful ratchet joint at the elbow, which goes about 90, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks to 90 degrees. It's not amazing, but a decent amount. Then another point where he's kind of lacking, no wrist articulation. These are just completely set in place. Then he does actually have a waist swivel. It can sometimes knock into the bumper on his back, but I find it still fairly easy to get a decent range out of it, even with that kibble back there. And it works pretty well. Then at the hips, sorry, I just flipped down his knee pad there. He has universal hips. They go out all the way, the full Van Damme. And he has kind of strange detents in his hips. They're not really ratcheted so much as they lock in here, and then they lock in here for truck mode. That doesn't really affect his posing all that much. It's very easy to go between those two detents. It's just a very strange design. I don't really understand it, but it's there. Then he has a knee that goes just a tiny bit over 90. But, basically, for all intents and purposes, it's a 90-degree bend. Then a swivel at the knee. And the one other place where he's kind of lacking, there is no ankle tilt. But the foot is able to tilt this way for transformation. So all around, I would say, honestly, pretty good articulation. Yeah, it's not quite up to snuff for modern standards, but I think the most glaring thing he's missing is just the ankle tilts, and he still, stands perfectly solid, even if you can't tilt the ankles. So it's just kind of an appearance thing where, yeah, his foot isn't really on the ground, but I can still get him perfectly solid and standing in the pose like this. So, honestly, I don't mind all that much. I didn't expect to love this figure as much as I do. When it came out, I was 5 years old and dismissed the figure for having a faux grille, never giving it a second look. Today, it's easily my favorite Chug Optimus. He's relatively well articulated, has awesome accessory integration, and just feels incredible in hand. 19 years later, I think this figure more than holds up, and is a mold that any Transformers fan should definitely get to experience. Anyways, this has been STSC, and I'm definitely not considering buying a sealed Nerf Megatron to go against this guy. Definitely not.